Hey everyone, I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. From the heart, thank you. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to this video to help support the message. Also, do please know the message is now out in a book and in Kindle on Amazon. For those that like to read, it has a little bit extra than what I've been putting out. Thank you. Anyways, everyone, I want to continue off with the second part. So they're back to back on the same channel. I was going to do the second part on the reaction channel, but after giving it some thought, it's better if they're back to back next to each other. That way, if you need to backtrack from one to the next, it'll be a lot easier, right? But anyways, like I ended up on the last one. I touched on it enough that Pinky would end up going ahead of time and he would get captured. He would get skinned. Couple homies literally got made pozole. Nayarit was, excuse me, Beltranes, straight up, you know. And shortly after that, we came. The four that came, as you guys know, was me, um, the three Pilis, and Tweety. We would never make it, right? And it was part of our fault because we had a target, and again, it was the director of the of the penal, right? The prison, literally, because he was working with them, and well, it had reached back out to us how he was allowing our people to be treated inside. When I say our people, I'm not just saying camaradas, but the people that were with us, right? Or we were with them. So we get up, end up getting busted, and I already touched on it enough, right? We would we would get it handed to us for a month and a half, a month. Let's just say a whole month, right? To not put salsa on the tacos, right? And by everyone, literally, they knew who we were. They just they wanted us to talk. At the end of the day, right? They wanted us to admit we were there to pull something off for Sinaloa. And again, nobody spoke. At least if one would have, it would have been a wrap for us. Period. Point blank. But anyways, that's one of the most I've been clear with everyone on how being a camarada overall in Mexico, how we're received in the state prisons, right? Because keep in mind they have ceferesos and then they have the state ones. State ones are usually always run by who runs the plaza, right? And overall, the only place that I would not dislike is Sinaloa and Jalisco. But anyways, we will go through what we went through. And it's a small world. Even when you're out here doing things you could say in old Mexico, right? Because I mentioned Marihuana and I mentioned Cesar. They were two original Zetas from Tamaulipas, right? And they were proud out of it. You know, we would end up hitting there, and like I mentioned before, they wouldn't even allow us to group in twos. If we would literally get caught speaking to each other, we would be taken down to Siete Locos and we would spend there 3 days, right? And literally having them bring lunch, excuse me, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you know, because again, they knew they just couldn't get it out of us, right? Again, the ones in charge at the time was the direct sister, you know, of the Beltran Leivas, and the one playing the front was the uncle, Blas Leiva. You know, he literally got brought all the way from Tijuana to Nayarit due to the who they had in this prison, right? Well, I mentioned there was a couple homies that were with them, and they weren't sidestepping. Don't misunderstand when I say they were showing us some love, that they weren't with them 100%, right? Because they were. Pelon from 18, Chivis, and Wilbur, and Pablo. Pablo being the one with the most weight in the Beltranes. You know, he was known as El Ocho de los Beltranes. And for those that want to look him up, you can, you know. Him and his brother, they got busted in a little town called Villa Hidalgo. I don't remember the exact number, but they had over 25 buckets with acid and people in it, right? They were real famous for that. And, well, shortly after this, he would end up getting out, you know, and it was part of one of the biggest massacres that happened in Nayarit, you know. But getting back into when we were in the jail, when Wilbur got there, he started speaking for us, you know. Wilbur was known as Pelón or Pelocho from Los Beltranes, and we couldn't even use the phone, you know, to put it to you in them type of words, because they had these little midgets. I'm sorry I say it like that. These guys that they would send to spy on us. We'll get on the public phone and they will remember the number. They will remember the conversation from beginning to end, and they will go straight to Blas and tell him, right? So me personally, I never jumped on the phone. The one that here and there jumped on the phone was Richie, the senor. But when Wilbur came into the play and then Pablo, they were aware of what was happening with Blas, right, with us, and they started pulling for us in the sense of, you know, they had cell phones and they would invite us to their cells and they were allowing us to make calls without ear hustling, you know. They would show us that respect. And then, you know, Pablo was a real big fan of a Santa Muerte, and even though he was Beltran, he had me do work on him, right? Both sleeves of the Santa Muerte and on him. But anyways, that's how we started. I'm not gonna say grouping up because that was still a red flag, right? But we were able to walk in twos. Before then, the only time we talked was, like I said before, it's the soccer field. We would get out there before 6 in the morning and with some chanate, and we would walk laps. and but we're solos, right? And as he's coming, I'm going. In that brief second, we cross paths. We would share messages, you know, and that's the only way up until they got there. Anyways, I had I always been a oh, I used to be, excuse me. Let me correct myself. I used to hold grudges. I used to carry people. I was full of hate, sincerely. When I didn't mind at all. Never hesitated, never mind, getting on someone, however the means. And there was a big revolution that was going to happen. You see, Pablo didn't like Blas at all, and he wanted to take over the penal. He had that juice to do so, right? Now, in this, the two people that were basically the strongest supporters of Blas on the yard and the direct sister were these two individuals from the last letter, Los Zetas, right? And like I said, we had past history, right? Again, they knew exactly who we were, but they just weren't willing to bust a grape. That was just it, right? They just wanted to do their thing and be faramayoso and you know. Anyways, when this came to play, both these individuals were in the same cell. They were in building 4 on on the third tier. It's kind of like Pelican Bay, right? The For example, you got D1, 2, 3, and in D1 you got pods. You know, you got A, B, C, and so on, and that's how it was here. You got building, and you got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they were on 3 in the almost the last cell. The last cell was the cantina, right, where they made sell alcohol. And anyways, my anger made me to make mistakes. That to the grace of God, besides a butt whooping, it didn't escalate, right? Because Pablo was there long enough to cover it up. And even though the Pilis told me like, "Hey, Chino, Pablo, he might have been a camarada, but he is who he is. Don't." And I told him, "Nah, I'm gonna help him if it's to take over and for us to have a peace of mind. When he's not gonna help us get out as long as the director's in his place, right? But at least that incident had just happened with me and Little Man, where we were speaking by the phones and we were speaking in English. And nasty ass Puerca from Beltranes, he was one of the fools in charge, you could say. He stopped and basically told me and Little Man, if I hear you guys speaking in English again, I want to beat you down for days. So, me being an idiot, I told him, we'll get to beating. And it became a big issue. And that was the first time that we seen Pablo and Wilbur really stick up for us because he called Puerca and his cell when I was tattooing him. And he told him, I heard he told him this, I don't know what you think, kind of power you have, but you can't do that. You can't say that. This and that. Now you feel some type of way about it. He could stop tattooing me and you go ahead and do it. So I stopped the tune and I backed up in the back of the cell and I told him, hey, Kyle, let's boogie. And individual left it alone. We'll just say that. Again, they sit down to pee. They're just brave with a bunch of Talibanes are with them, right? But anyways, what I mean by before Pablo took off, right before the organization took him out to join the streets again, he wanted to start removing the people in charge, and I didn't want to jeopardize the homies, right? Nor the Pilis, of course not. So I told him, hey, don't trip, I'll do it. And I wanted Marijuano to be sincere. Even though I should have gone for Cesar, because at one point he was the main target, right? But again, it just got personal, right? And I went out there like if I was going to buy some alcohol. They have the last sale. They had alcohol, whatever you wanted, tequila, uh, rum, whatever you wanted. They had bottles back there, right, for sale. So I went out there on the cell next door, and I literally went in there without glorifying. I in Mexico they don't have them homemade things. They're for real. Is the ones you hit and you literally see them go through. And I'll just say, marijuana got dealt with. I came back to Pablo's cell, and he kept his word. Shot everything and stopped it. And my mistake was, when he was supposed to go up on war with blast, excuse me, in the open, right? It was gonna be from two. No, I'm lying. Excuse me. From 3 block, 4, 5, and 6 were supporting Pablo, and 3, 2, and Pájaros as infirmary. They have apartments. They were supporting Blas. So I told Pablo, hey, they're not expecting me. Allow me to be the first one to hit. In my mind, I'm just thinking like, hey, I gotta hit Cesar, right? If I do, Marijuano and Cesar, they were our targets at one point. I'll be able to, when I get out, at least report back over there that we took care of the target. That's going to bring trust, excuse me, and it's going to bring prices. Of course, for the causa, right? For me, I wasn't making anything, believe me, but I was part of opening that pipeline, right? That was what we were doing there. Period. Just because we were busted, they didn't mean we sit down and just pretend, you know, or put things aside. That has never held us down. So in the morning when we came out to walk, I got ready. I had what I had with me. The person that wanted to go with me and I couldn't stop was Little Man. They had, like I stated before, they had hurt him real bad with bats due to some BS, and he wanted to go with me. And I told him like, look, Little, I'm gonna take care of this fool. If you see the 6, 7 fools that take care of him jump in, if you want to jump in, feed me. If not, it's okay. Let him stomp me in. It's part of. We're not all gonna make it. You know. And he said, Simon, but I knew he would have jumped in. But it's one of them times, when a higher power, in my case, is Jesus, right? Shine a light on me. And I don't mean to bring Jesus' name and my actions were wrong, period, in and out, right? And I didn't see Jesus at the moment. I didn't think about him. I was in an eternal fight with him. You know, I was far from from even thinking like that. But as we're walking, it comes time to, boogie. More and more people start coming out. And there was a homegirl. She was from Azusa. She had been busted for a while though, down there. And she came out and just basically, hey Chino little, and she started taking laughs with us. And right when I was gonna boogie, right, I'm talking about right when I was gonna boogie, I took 2 steps forward before I pulled to start getting on him, right? You see the Marines rushing 4 block and take out Pablo. Literally, it ain't like the squad. It was literally the Marines that went in, took out Pablo, and took him with them. I had already pulled out, so my only reaction was to throw that. And homegirl from Azusa, she too grabbed it, but I was already moving forward towards Cesar, so I didn't have an option. I started binking on him, but just knuckles, right? And until until they jumped in and started stomping me in. The good thing, the homegirl not only grabbed that, also grabbed the homie and kept strolling, right? Because I wouldn't, I felt right if they would have fell with me. The whole point of the story is that it was my mistake, and it's what a lot of camaradas do down here, right? Which is trust in things that are not written in stone, We're not like down here. I remember that time I was down there in Talacha for, man, and they just had me down there just to get stumped out. Why did I take off on them, right? And my excuse was I confused them, but they wanted answers, right? Eventually, they would let me back out, and that's was my huge mistake, trusting Pablo and knowing that he was once a camarada, even though he was helping us to at least contact people and stuff like that. He had already put the flag down. We're used to seeing people jump puddles, jump from the causa to something else. And, well, at least in my case, I would fall for that I still got love for camaradas, right? And it would turn out bad. And I got lucky. We'll say lucky for those that are not believers. In my sitting down and analyzing, it was God. Cesar was known for literally taking apart people. And, I'm not going to glorify, but I put knuckles on that fool good in front of everybody. And yes, I got mine handed to me for at least a week. But, I'm still here. It's one of them things, I reflect on. Like, why me? Shortly after that is when the homie Ant will do something way smaller, and he got dealt with. Period. You know, and it had to do with that restaurant that lady had, Bandidos, and it was just one of the waiters. It was not even nobody important. He felt some type of way about him, and he took off on him, and let's just say they took him out in a couple trash bags. So the inside of this one is that God, a higher power, however you see fit, He's always there, even if we're doing what we're doing. But anyways, I know this one don't really make sense. I just wanted to finish the sharing with you my personal experience with these two known Zetas. Cesar was one of the originals. He used to be military. Marijuana, he was a weenie, and not gonna glorify on it, but he got dealt with, and tell me what would cause an individual like Cesar that was known for taking apart people, ladies, children, people, for him to touch his heart for me in a place where nobody would ever even know I was there. What would you call that? Anyways, this is just a story I wanted to share with everyone. Sorry, I don't really have an inside look, a message. I was just responding to those that asked me to touch on my crossings with the last letters. I guess down look could be that. Remember, not every individual playing the part of a solid homie or having love for the homies is always that. Sometimes that individual that walked away at one point could hold more love for you than the person hugging you and telling you I love you, homie, and that you're pushing with. I guess just be always wise and be a good judge of character, right? With this said, mi gente, muy buenas noches. Stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones.